Hello everyone, how are you doing? Welcome back to my channel. Uh, Today I wanna cover a topic that is quite difficult for me to talk about. To be completely honest, I wasn't too sure whether to make this video or not, but I think it's beyond me and my fears, and I really want to make this video. So trigger warning: we are going to talk about bullying and various forms of psychological abuse in a school setting. So it's not going to be easy for me to talk about that because I was a victim of bullying when I was a kid. Um, but this channel is very important for me to speak my mind out. It's very therapeutic in a way, whether I talk about happy stuff, cool anecdotes, music, or things that are more on the negative or sad end of the spectrum. Um, so what you can see behind me, what I chose for the shot of this video, is my old primary school. I attended this school from age 3 until age 10 before I moved to another school. And yeah, let's say these weren't the happiest days of my life. um, but I want to talk about all this just because I want to add a video into the void of the internet where I can share my own personal experience with bullying, what my understanding of it is. I guess kind of for me, so that in the future, if I ever come back to this channel, or if people in my family or close friends want to know what kind of person I was in my 20s, they can come back to the channel and yeah, and see what's up. But also, you never know, even though at this point I don't have many viewers on my channel at all, but you never know, there might be people who are suffering from bullying at school who will happen to be watching this video, and if that's the case, I hope I can bring them some level of comfort and be a voice, a reassuring voice, and maybe even give a few advice at my own humble level, of course. Yeah, I don't want to dwell too much on the details and how I was bullied, and because it's just gonna stir bad memories. And I mean, making this video already stirs some bad memories, obviously, but I don't think that that's the point of the video. I will describe it lightly, I guess. So when I first moved here in this village, it's a small village where I live, where I'm from. I think there's not even 1,000 people who live here. It's very small. And all around us is the countryside. There's not much going on. Which actually, all these details will have their importance in this video. Let me just check that the microphone is picking up my voice. It is. Brilliant. I brought an Oasis drink. Let's crack that open. Tropical flavor. All right, and I arrived here with my parents when I was 3 years old. That's when we moved in this village with my parents and my sister, my older sister. My parents still live here, and I kind of live there and there for the past bunch of years anyway. I'm not home very often, let's put it that way. But now, because of certain circumstances, I had to come back and spend some time away from the world. It's okay, I dig this place. It is dead, there's not much going on, and it is frustrating at times because I can't go out or meet friends or go to the club as easily as if I was living in a city, obviously. Especially coming back from Manchester, which is one of the biggest cities in Europe, a very dense population. So it is quite abrupt, the change, but it's okay. Anyway, sorry, I don't want to digress. I want to stick to the point of this video, and I don't want it to run for ever and ever. And I first moved to this school, and I had a lisp when I was a kid. Is that how you say a lisp? So yeah, I was speaking like this, I guess. I can't really remember. Then my parents took me to I don't even know what's the technical word for that, but those specialists that can teach you how to better your pronunciation or improve it. And so I got rid of the lisp when I was around 10-ish years old. But until then, I had a lisp, a quite pronounced one too, and many of the kids would be picking on me for that. And in the early years, it was just a little bit of teasing, I guess. And I feel like I've always been mostly a positive person, and if you see pictures of me as a toddler, I was always smiling so much that I would drool on my chin. It's very cute, I was always smiling. My parents tell me that I rarely cried as a baby. I was always very content and smiling and laughing and having a fucking blast, Hell yeah. Godspeed, baby Arno. Um, and yeah, I always try to be positive, I do. I guess I can be annoying like that, the kind of guy who laughs while telling you his problems. But I don't know, it's just my nature, I guess. And so at first, in those early years in this school, when some of the kids would pick on me for my lisp or because I was sometimes a bit of an oddball, I've never been diagnosed with autism or things like that because whatever. And so I can't say I'm autistic or whatever. But I do feel sometimes like I'm a little strange, in my head. And that's okay, we all are. That's why I don't give a shit, much of a shit anyway, for these labels and neurodivergent and whatever. Who cares? But especially as a young kid, I think sometimes I was a bit odd. I had different interests and hobbies than most of the kids in the school, and also my lisp and the fact that I was always quite tall. So there were different angles of attack for the pupils who wanted to belittle me. It was I'm lucky. I was never physically bullied. Nothing crazy like making me drink water from the toilet or whatever kind of fucked up shit you can hear sometimes, right? It was always verbal abuse, like telling me mean shit. Um, yeah. And at first, it was literally, it was subtle. It was only a handful of kids, and I just chose to ignore them. And I was a kid. Sometimes I would even try. I would think like, oh, maybe they don't know that I'm chill and cool, so I would try to befriend them. Um, which of course, when a kid decides to be cruel with you, they will be cruel. So if you offer them friendship, they can take advantage of that and get pretend to be a friend for a while, and then it hits even harder. Things like that. That was in the very early years of my time in this school. My time in this school. I speak of it like I was in jail or whatever. um, it wasn't like that. School overall was okay. Um, it's more like the kids. Mm. And also something that I need to explain, and that's why it was important for me to mention at the start of the video that I live in a small village. Um, is that if both of your parents are active and have a job, um, there's nowhere to go for the lunch break. There's no cafeteria in there, so that's why there are quite many nannies. operating in this village. I think 5 or 6 of them. Maybe it's changed since then. It's probably changed, but how I recall it, there used to be 5 or 6 nannies in the village, where many kids would go to the nanny, and the nanny would prepare lunch, and you could stay there for the lunch break, which was the case for me because my parents both work outside of the village. Like you have people who have a job in a place like here, usually they have to drive out quite far away, which is the case for my parents. So I couldn't go back home, so I had to go to my nanny. And some of the kids who would stay, who would stay over at my nanny's, who would have the same nanny as me. We used to be cool at first because she was a great nanny. I sometimes still meet her. She's like almost, I don't want to say secondary mom, because a mom is, it's very, it's a big deal, right? You only have one mom, but uh, when I was growing up, she was there for me if I needed anything, and she taught me how to tie my laces, my shoelaces, things like that. So she was somewhat of a big deal in my upbringing. And of course, she would make sure that all the kids got along at her house. And so there was a bit of a vicious circle, I guess, a vicious cycle, sorry, because when during the lunch break, I would go back to my nanny, and all the kids would all act friendly. And it would confuse me because some of these kids would be the same ones who would pick on me and say mean shit. And then after lunch we'd go back to the school, and they would just switch again. And it was very confusing for me as a young one. Um, and I guess it was very insidious because I didn't realize something was wrong. I just thought, oh, they're bantering. It's just their sense of humor, you know. And some of the teachers, of course, eventually noticed that there was something wrong, and one of them would actually pick on my lisp as well. My teacher, just this old fucking bitch of a witch. Shouldn't use those words because they're quite sexist, but she was a terrible woman. One time when I was 15 years old, I was walking around the village, and she happened to be driving by, and she was just like saying hi to me like that. And I flipped her off, and I felt so proud. I felt like a proper thug, It felt good because fuck her, for real. And so I guess that highlights a problem that sometimes kids who are bullied at school can't find help or don't know how to bring up the issue because you're a young kid, and it's you're still innocent and pure, and you don't realize when something is wrong. Because as the years went by in that school, more and more kids would participate. It became the group against me, right? And it was very hard to live. I didn't want to go to school, but I didn't want to tell my parents about it either. I was quite good at masking it. I'm gonna smoke a fag. I'm not much of a smoker, right? And I know this is a bad example, so don't smoke, dear viewers. But I quit smoking weed some time ago. It was quite difficult, and I guess this is a bit of a proxy for me. But I will quit. I'm not a heavy smoker. I just have the occasional one. Um, and it was an isolating experience because even the kids who wouldn't be too mean, you don't want to be associated with the black sheep, so no one wanted to be my friend. It was quite difficult. I guess the lunch break was a time for me to relax a bit. But then when I was 9 years old, I still had that horrible woman for a teacher, and she wouldn't allow pupils to leave class um, for the bathroom. If you needed a pee, you had to wait until recess. Or you had, you know, you couldn't leave the classroom, which is utter crap. I can't believe it. It's crazy. Can you imagine being a grown ass adult and not allowing little children to go to the toilets? What the hell is wrong with this world? Sometimes I swear. And for some reason, my bladder would would tell me to go to pee only in during class. And one time, I'm just on my chair, I'm freaking out. I really need to pee. It's bad. Raise my hand and ask if I can go to the toilet. No, you can't go to the toilet. Um, and I peed my pants. And then it switched from saying mean shit and picking on my lisp and rejecting me to, he peed his pants. What a loser. And everyone was very, very mean to me. For a good year, I would say. It just went up a notch. It was really, really hard. My nanny came to pick me up at school when I peed myself. She brought me a fresh pair of pants and all that. Um, what a hero. Bless her. It was just horrible, it wasn't cool. And on our desk, school desk, we had a little bit. How do you? I don't even know how to describe that in English, but we had a rack. Is that how you say? Like a metal rack underneath the desk, so you could put your notebooks in that. And one day we're coming back from recess, and under my desk I find an envelope, a big envelope like that, and it says "Pour Arnaud." It's written on it with a heart, for Arnaud. And I was quite sad at the time, yeah. And with my innocent child mind, I thought my parents or my nanny had put it there to sort of reassure me or whatever. I'm happy. I'm trying to be low key. I don't want the teacher to catch me. I open the envelope, and in the envelope there's just a ton and ton and ton of horrible, horrible stuff. Uh, One of them I remember was the picture of a pig, and it said, "That's your mom," or mean words, or "You're a piece of shit," things like that. Really hardcore shit. And that was too much for me. I had been quite tough all these years up until that point. I was like, keep it in. But that was too much, and I broke into tears. I freaked out. I was angry and sad, and I freaked out, and I stood up and I just threw my chair against the wall like that. And the teacher was like, "Oh, what are you doing? Come to the wall," yelling at me. And I had to stand up against the wall until I had quietened down. And I'm against the wall, and I start banging my head on the wall like that. And so they called my nanny. She came to pick me up. And then I guess my parents were aware that the kids were mean at me, but no one knew the full extent because I didn't want to tell them. I didn't want to tell my nanny. I kept most of it in. Recording? Because if it stops recording, that would be a bummer. Because I'm not recording that shit twice. Fuck that. And so the next day, my mom came to the school to meet with the headmistress. Is that how you say? She was a woman, the head of the school, to discuss the whole thing. Yeah. And that's when my parents, I guess, realized the whole extent of it all. And they moved me to another school the next year. I was 10 years old. And actually, my final year of primary school here, a new kid arrived at the school and he was overweight. Lou, Lou. And he became a target as well. So we actually became friends, he and I. We were like the two black sheeps, you know. And in a way, these were formative years for me. I hate to say that because it's almost as if I'm normalizing what was happening to me. I'm not, right? It was wrong, but I understood I understood a lot of things. I learned about human nature as a child and how people could be cruel and the group effect. And um, what I'm saying is, from a young age, I was aware of the importance of being kind to everyone and not to pick on people for who they are. But yeah, I was 10 years old. My parents moved me to another school. And now we're getting to an interesting part of the video and how you can reproduce certain patterns even when you're a victim. So I moved to another school, and for me, it was a miracle. It was the opportunity of a fresh new start, and I didn't want this to happen again. And I was getting rid of my lisp at the same time, and I figured I would make friends. That's when I met my friend Stefan, you know, the guy with whom we went to watch the Odyssey last week, with whom I reconnected recently. And I started to make friends, and it was completely new for me. We're like a group of 10 boys, like a friend group, and it was great for me. I felt like, oh, you know, but I I was a class clown. I became a class clown because I wanted to be cool, and I wanted to avoid being bullied again. And there was a child in the class, Eloi, and sometimes I was a little mean with him. I wasn't bullying him, but I could be a little mean. For not even a year, right? And one day we played football with his school bag for a ball, and he went to see the teacher, and he told the teacher I was the one initiating the whole thing, which wasn't entirely true, but oh, it's true that I participated in this fucked up thing. And I was a big revelation for me. I was 10 years old and I realized I can't be that. I can't be mean with other kids. So I apologized to him and we made it up, you know. And I guess that I realized that I'd rather be bullied than be the bully. Yeah. And I still sometimes regret um, being mean to that kid. For it wasn't a long time; it was only a few months, right? But I guess it goes to show that uh, when something traumatic happens to you, sometimes you almost wish to reproduce whatever fucked up behavior people could pull on you to avoid being in that position again. Um, and from that, I also struggled with trust. I had trust issues for a long time. I still do sometimes. My friends in the early stages of forming a friendship, they need to deserve my friendship, and right, I can be very cautious like that. Yeah, and I was a class clown. I wouldn't get the best grades and all that stuff. And then in that new school, I think 3 years in that new school, you know what I mean. After after I had been in that school for 3 years, I decided to switch and I started to study very hard and use my brain. And that's when I understood the power of knowledge and learning things and curiosity and opening yourself to the world. Again, I was very young. But I still lived in that village, and I would still sometimes bump into my old bullies. One time I was my bike. I was cycling around the village, and I all of a sudden they were all here, and they circled me, and they had like sticks, and they tried to beat me with the stick. That was quite intense, and so I ran away without my bike, and they smashed my bike. And I told my dad. I remember my dad was furious, and he was like, "Come with me." Of course, I condemned that. You shouldn't do that. But he come with me in the car, and we drove around until we found the kids again, the group of kids. And he didn't do anything violent to them, but he yelled at them, and he said like, "You're all a bunch of fucking bastards," and speak to my son again, and I won't go see your parents, but shit will get real, right? And after that, I guess I never really had problems with them ever again. And also that was when I was 14 years old, and soon after I moved to my high school in Strasbourg. I mentioned that in my video on the train, and it was again a fresh new start, and I wasn't in the village as much, nearly as much anymore. So I never really saw them ever again. But even when I was in that new school after the primary school, I would meet people, I would meet kids, and oh, you're the one who pissed himself. So they kept telling the story to everyone to humiliate me. Yeah. So it followed me for a while, uh, that I had pissed myself when I was 9 years old. Jesus Christ, ridiculous. Anywho, I guess that's about it from my own personal experience with being bullied. And you know that now that I don't know where you're from, potential viewer of this channel. I feel like there's bullying everywhere. Here in France, it's a big problem still now. That it's so sad, so depressing. But every year there are many kids who choose to off themselves, right? Um, because of bullying. And back when I was bullied, going back home in the evening was my relief, was my safe space. I was with my parents, with my sister. I could. I wasn't affected by it. It was my, yeah, relief. How do you say, my little time of peace. But now with cyberbullying, and that's why I'm saying all this, is I'm so glad that smartphones or the internet was not a big thing back then in the 2000s, because I can't even imagine what kids these days who are bullied can sometimes go through when the bullying goes on outside of school, on the internet. It's really rough. It's really, really rough. And that's also why I want to raise awareness at my own humble level on this channel, because it is fucked up. It is rough. Um, if you're experiencing bullying, if you're being bullied, always reach out for help, no matter how young you are. If you feel like, oh, it's nothing at all, you're probably in denial. It's probably not the right word, but you're probably traumatized and trying to minimize what's happening inside of your head. But it's always important, if you think something is wrong, if you think people are behaving in a very bad way with you, you should always bring it up to your parents, to your teachers, to an adult. And if you find yourself in circumstances where you can't bring it up to any adults around you, then there are usually hotlines for that. I don't know what phone number to promote here because it depends where you're from, but look it up, and never feel ashamed of reaching out to people. There are people out there who are willing to help. It's very important to talk about it, and as soon as possible, right? I guess that's one of the core message of my video. Don't let it slide. It's not okay. Bullying is never okay. It's far from okay. And it's there's still a wound within me, whether I want it or not. Um, I'll give you an example, and actually, that's the idea of shooting this video originated a couple of weeks ago. I was I was walking around the village. I sometimes do that at night. They turned the street lamps off past 11 to save on electricity. So it's pitch dark in the village, and you can see the stars and the Milky Way, especially obviously on a cloudless night. So during the summer, for me, it's the best time to just walk around the village and allow myself to feel poetic and look at the stars and listen to the crickets at night and the frogs, and it's so peaceful, right? So it was one of those nights. I was walking around the village, and all of a sudden I'm hearing voices of a group of of young people who sounded like they were approximately my age, within my age. And I didn't see their faces, but I got almost paralyzed by fear instantly. I was like, oh, what if it's these people who used to bully me? And I got scared, and I ran off, and I jumped into a ditch, and I was like bending down, like that, and hoping they wouldn't see me. And then, of course, after waiting for a few minutes in that ditch, I realized how ridiculous the situation was, and how I was still affected by that all these years later, over 15 years later. Um, and and that's when I decided, oh, maybe I should make a video about this. But I was reluctant. I didn't like the idea of talking about all these things that are very personal in front of a camera. But today I brought myself to doing it. Because again, there's nothing to be ashamed of. I was a victim, and I want to raise my voice. So here we are. And I don't want to hold any grudge. I guess it's easy for me to say. I'll always kind of hate these people, but they were kids. Maybe they weren't fully aware of the consequences of their actions, or of what words could do to a person, and you can really hurt someone. Um, and It's difficult to remain positive and to keep love in your heart for everyone. Sometimes it seems impossible for certain people. You don't know how you can ever forgive. There's this great line from the song Daily Blues by King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, best band on the planet. The song Daily Blues that came out in 2024. And the line goes, what you gotta do is find that person you hate, grab him by the hand, look him in the eye, and say, I love you. Very profound. Proper hippie shit, right? Right in the middle of it. But it's true. Love is the answer to everything. Go ahead and say the word. Don't you know the word is love? Love. And if you love, you will be at peace. Maybe not always, but you'll be closer to a state of peace. Which is why I like to say peace and love and music all the time, because peace and love are some of the most important things to promote, I think, in this world. And music is the most beautiful thing in the world, in my totally unbiased opinion. It brings people together, it makes you want to move. It's the language of mankind, of humanity. We all speak it, we all understand. Yeah? So remember that always. And stay away from judgment. Don't judge people. Be curious. Be open to people. Love unconditionally. Except if someone is being a real prick at you, whatever, then of course you don't have to love them, but try to forgive them in your heart. That sounds all very fucking religious and Christian of me. I'm not Christian, I'm not religious. And I guess that could be a future video, religion. I don't like the community aspect of religion. I don't like the formatting aspect of religion. I think having a religious belief and faith can be constructive if it's something that's within you, within your mind, and if it helps you be at peace with the world and yourself, then fine. We all have our ways and our means to get there. um Sorry, I went on a bit of a tangent here. Yeah, love and peace and all that kind of things. I hope this video was clear. I hope you got something out of it. Stay safe out there. Reach out to people if you're in the trenches, or if you're going through something difficult like that. um yeah, and even when everything seems lost, abandon yourself in art and beauty and poetry and love, and that's how you'll get freedom and wisdom, I think. I guess future me can agree or disagree with me on that, or maybe I'll be more mature and I will revise my opinion on the matter, and I don't know, we'll see. Take care, everyone. Have a good day. Poetry is everywhere. Peace, love, and music.